'Tis the season, a season filled with words like jolly and cheer and hope and joy. But what do we do when we don't feel hopeful or we don't feel joyful? How exactly can we have great joy in the midst of the difficulties surrounding us? Well, we're talking about it today. Well, hey everyone, my name is Emily. I'm the pastor for Epic Online, and welcome to Epic Everywhere, practical teaching to help you grow in your faith no matter where you're at on your spiritual journey. Well, we're in week 2 of our Christmas series called Did You Know? And I'm so excited that you're here hanging out with us. I want to give a special welcome to all of you who are here for the first time. Hey, we really believe that church should be fun and meaningful and make a difference in your life, and that's exactly what we hope you experience today. Hey, be sure to stick around. Right after the message, we have a free gift that we want to mail you, and we'll be sharing some ways that you can get connected right here at Epic Online. But for now, let's go ahead and get to today's message.
Hey everyone, my name is Paul and I'm one of the teaching pastors here at Epic. Not too long ago, I was at the grocery store and I was checking out my items. I only had a few bags worth of stuff, but as I was putting my bags into the cart and I still had one bag on the counter, I felt something hit me hard in the back. So this happened all pretty fast. So I turned around and it turns out it was the guy behind me. He had hit me with his shopping cart and he looked at me and said, "Excuse me." Now, I know what you're thinking, like, Paul, it had to be an accident, right? This had to be an accident. I gotta tell you, it was not. It wasn't like, "Oh, excuse me, I wasn't paying attention. I'm so sorry for hitting you with my shopping cart." No, he was like, "You are in my way, excuse me." And it's not even like I was taking a long time. I gotta tell you, I paid super fast, okay? Not that that makes any difference because you don't hit people with your shopping cart just because they're not on your own like little made up warp speed timeline of checkout efficiency, okay? So, and friends, I gotta tell you, this happened. He rams me in the back and he says, "Excuse me." And I looked at this man dead in his eye sockets. And I said, "Thank you," with a smile. And I picked up my last bag and I walked away. Now, to be honest though, we were probably this close to seeing this headline in the evening news. Local Philadelphia man drop kicks another shopper in the face in a grocery store checkout aisle. I was that close. But I did just walk away and I did tell myself, Paul, this guy clearly has something bigger going on in his life than just being in a ridiculous hurry at the grocery store. He's got something else going on. But still, have you ever, like me, whether because of an interaction with someone or just something you're going through or just seeing the general state of things around us, you ever thought any of these thoughts? People are the worst. Everything is terrible. And what's the point? Right? Have you ever thought this, or is this just me? People are the worst. Everything's terrible. What's the point? If you've thought any of these, or if you are thinking any of these right now, I gotta tell you, today is for you. Today's for you. And today's topic is joy. And no, that's not a joke. Today's topic is joy. We're going to talk about joy, even though, and especially if you're feeling like people are the worst and everything is terrible, and what's the point of even trying anyway? So we're in this series called Did You Know? And it's leading us through and into Christmas. And we're focusing on a particular passage that describes what an angel announces to some shepherds when Jesus is born. And the angel says to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all people." And last week, Pastor Kent talked about how the birth of Jesus and everything that would happen because of it is good news. It's good news. And today, we're talking about joy, great joy. Like, did you know that you could have great joy even though it sometimes feels like people are the worst And did you know that you could have great joy even when it feels like everything is terrible? Now, last year, around the same time, I taught about joy as well. And I don't want to repeat too much of that, but I do want to give you a quick kind of cheat sheet or rundown or breakdown in case you didn't catch it or don't remember. But if you are interested in checking out the whole thing, hey, you're already on our YouTube channel, so you can just search for Trade Your Sorrow for Joy. That's the title of that. Trade Your Sorrow for Joy is from the White Elephant series. Feel free to check that out. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a breakdown of what I mentioned about joy in there, because to even get what we're talking about today, like, we need to understand what joy even is, or kind of what it looks like. And I do sometimes think that we're a little bit confused. So when joy gets talked about, a lot of people confuse joy and happiness, and there's a lot of overlap between the two, but there are distinctions. And so here are some of those distinctions, and I hope that this can be helpful. So happiness is shallow. Happiness is a little bit more shallow. Joy is deep. Happiness is short term, and joy is long term. Happiness comes and goes, but joy lasts. Happiness is a little more like a light switch. It's on and off, right? It's on and off. It's on and off. It's in and out. But joy is chosen, and it's developed, and it's practiced. Again, it's long term. And ultimately, happiness reacts to the situation, reacts to what's going on around us, reacts to how we're feeling right now. Joy transcends. So happiness is, right, more dependent on circumstances, more dependent on the moment, but joy can transcend anything that's happening right now. And another way to think about this, another way I like to think about happiness, is that happiness can't really share space with other emotions. So, like, you can be angry, or you can be sad, or you can be happy, but it's hard to be more than one of those things at a time. Now, sometimes you can pull off being happy and angry and sad all the same moment, but you can't live your life like that. You can't be walking around like that 24/7. But joy is a little different, because it can share space with anger, with frustration, with disappointment, or with grief, or with sadness. You can be experiencing those things and still have joy. And so this is the same joy that the Apostle Peter writes about in a letter to Christians who were living all throughout the southwestern part of Asia in the first century. He writes this: "Though you have not seen Christ, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy." Now, he refers to this like inexpressible joy. Some translations of this verse say that it's unexplainable or unspeakable. It's the kind of joy that has depth. It's the kind of joy that has staying power. It doesn't just come and go. It's the kind of joy that can weather the storms of life. It's the kind of joy that I want, and I imagine that you would want as well. It's the kind of great joy that 2,000 years ago an angel promised would come with the arrival of Jesus. And I think that we all want that kind of joy, right? We all want that. But before Peter writes about this inexpressible and glorious joy, he actually does write this a little bit earlier in the passage. He says, "For a little while, you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials." And it's like, okay, here we go. What a bummer. All right, that sounds way less appealing. All right, let's stick with the joy, please. All right, let's just get the joy part. I don't want to hear about the suffering. All right, I just want to have joy. We have the joy without the suffering part. The challenging truth is this: the joy is often preceded by or even coincides with suffering. They often go hand in hand. They're not just separate. It's not like you're just going to have joy. You're never going to suffer. You're only going to have joy. You can only have joy if you're not suffering. They often go hand in hand, and they're happening at the same time. You're suffering, and you have grief and trials, and you're experiencing darkness, but there can still be joy. And so for us to truly understand joy and to experience joy, I actually think that we need to lean into our suffering a little bit. I think the instinct is to kind of escape the darkness, is to escape our pain, is to escape our suffering. But I think what we need to do, if we want to experience joy, and what we're going to do today for a little bit, is to lean in to the tough stuff for a bit. And this is a strong theme in the tradition of the church, that in this month leading up to Christmas, it's as we wait in the darkness before Christmas Day, that's where some of the good stuff is, some of the learning, some of the growth, some of the work that needs to be done. And so to help us do this, to lean into kind of the darkness a little bit, I'm going to recruit some help from some of the best ever at being a downer around Christmas time. And that is the Grinch himself. As the Grinch is, after all, is the one who said this about Christmas. Look, I don't want to make waves, but this whole Christmas season is stupid, stupid, stupid. And that's the spirit. That's the spirit. That's where I want to spend a little time with today, okay? So at one point in the Jim Carrey movie version of the Grinch gets an invitation for the holiday cheermeister, and he walks us through his schedule and his calendar. I want you to see if you relate to any of this.
Even if I wanted to go, my schedule wouldn't allow it. 4 o'clock, wallow in self-pity. 4:30, stare into the abyss. 5 o'clock, solve world hunger. Tell no one. 5:30, jazzercise. 6:30, dinner with me. I can't cancel that again. 7 o'clock, wrestle with my self-loathing. I'm booked. Of course, if I want the loathing to 9, I could still be done in time to lay in bed, stare at the ceiling, and slip slowly into madness.
He says, even if I wanted to go, my schedule wouldn't allow it. Now, that has some real December vibes, doesn't it? And tell me that this hasn't been your calendar, your life at some point. Maybe some self-pity, maybe some self-loathing, maybe some just staring into the abyss, maybe some staring at the ceiling and just descending into madness. That preaches. That preaches. So as we sit here in the darkness of December, and I mean like the literal darkness because it's like full-on nighttime by 5 p.m. nowadays, we don't have to gloss over or shy away from our struggles and our doubts and our fears, our frustrations. In fact, we would be joining a long and rich tradition in the church of leaning into that darkness as we wait for Christmas to arrive. And regardless, for many of us, this season is not the happiest time of the year. Like some of us are just battling, right? We're battling illnesses. Some of us are battling depression, anxiety. Some of us are battling situations at work. Some of us are battling situations in our family or in our relationships. Some of us are battling and wrestling with grief. And this isn't even exclusive to just December either, right? Most of us, this stuff is year-round. It's nonstop. And we've got to suffer with hardships, and some of those are within ourselves. Some of those are with the people or the situations immediately around us, and some are just with the world in general, right? People being greedy, people being selfish, people being rude, people being violent, people ramming into you with their shopping carts. The ice caps are melting. Our ecosystems are failing, right? It's like I said earlier, people are the worst. Everything is terrible. What's the point? And sometimes it's easy to understand why Ebenezer Scrooge says, bah humbug, all the time. Like that could be any of us. Or it's like one of my favorite lines in one of my favorite Christmas movies that always makes me laugh when 8-year-old Kevin McAllister from Home Alone says, when I grow up and get married, I'm living alone. All right, and he just starts stomping. He's like, I'm living alone. I'm living alone. Kind of makes sense, right? I've wanted to be there at some point. You wanted to be there at some point, I'm sure, right? After all, people are the worst. Everything's terrible. And what is even the point? At least, that's one story you could believe about what you're going through. That's one story you could believe about your suffering. about what's going on in the world around us, that people are the worst, that everything is terrible, and what is even the point of trying to do anything about it? Like, how can I have great joy when this is what I've got to deal with? How can I have great joy when that is what's happening in the world? And this is where we come to an intersection. And not just today, and not just in December, but every day. It's here where we get to wrestle with the question, what story will you choose to believe? What story will you choose to believe? Now, when it comes to the challenges that you face, when it comes to the obstacles in front of you, when it comes to the difficulties you're enduring, when it comes to the pain that people are causing you, or even the pain that you're causing other people, or the pain that you're witnessing in the world, what story will you choose to believe? And this decision, the story that you're going to choose to believe, it's an important one. It has huge implications and consequences. Because whatever story you choose to believe, you're not just some passive audience member, like the way that you can just sit in a movie theater and eat some popcorn while you watch. No, the story you choose to believe will be the story that you write. Like the story you choose to believe is the story you will write. Whatever you choose to believe about your life or what's happening around you, you are going to contribute to the writing of that story. Your belief is going to put ink to paper for whatever story it is that you believe. Like, if I truly believe that people are the worst, that belief has consequences. Like, it will affect the way I see people. And that will affect the way that I treat people. And the way I treat people will perpetuate a story that people are the worst. Like, there are ripple effects to believing that story. If I believe that everything is terrible and that nothing that I do matters because it's just going to be terrible anyway, ironically, that belief matters because that belief has consequences. Like, if I believe the story that nothing I do can help, so what's the point? There are real people and there are real situations that are gonna be worse off because of the absence of my help. If I believe the story that there's no hope, that has ripple effects. And that has ripple effects, not just for me, but for the people around me and the world around me. If I believe that there's no hope, I am actively contributing to hopelessness around me. Whatever story you choose to believe, you will help to actively write in this world, whether you like it or not. So the story that you choose to believe, that matters like a lot. The story you choose to believe can be the difference between hope and no hope. So we should examine the story we choose to believe with great wisdom and care and courage. Take, for example, the story that author and biologist Richard Dawkins presents about the world. I'm going to read this to you. In a universe of electrons and selfish genes, blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt, other people are going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. So, hey, Richard Dawkins is a smart person, much smarter than I am, very successful, way more successful than I'll ever be. And you can choose to believe that story, that there is no rhyme or reason to anything, that there's no purpose, there's no evil, there's no good, there's no justice, there's just indifference. You can choose to believe that. And a lot of people do choose to believe that story. And choosing to believe that story will determine the story you end up writing in this world. there is another story. There is another story. This is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down. And all right, that's a whole different story that you can choose to believe. We're not going to get into that story today. All right, it's a different story. But in all seriousness, this is a story that is good news and can bring great joy for all people. This is a story about Jesus coming to earth to show us what love looks like and thereby showing us what God is like. And when Jesus showed us what God was like, he could have shown us anything. Like he could have touched down on earth in the palace of an emperor, surrounded by every status symbol of power and wealth. Like he could have taken the form of a superhuman being who just towered over all people. But he chose to come in humility as a human, as a baby, and he was born in a stable. Jesus could have shown us how to be successful in life by being cutthroat, by doing whatever it takes to get ahead, by stepping on anyone and anything in his path. Instead, he showed us not how to make everything work for us and in our favor, but he knelt down on the ground and he washed people's feet. And he showed us how to serve one another. Jesus could have demonstrated how to crush your enemies, how to make those who cross you pay. But instead, he showed us how to forgive. Jesus could have risen to power, used that power to accomplish whatever he wanted, to accomplish his goals. Instead, he allowed himself to be crucified, to die on a cross, to show us that love is sacrificial. This story of Jesus, this is a story about life, a story about a God who came to earth so that we may have life and have it to the full. This is a story of resurrection, a story about a God who defeated not only death, but the fear of death, who showed us in his death and his resurrection that he makes all things new. This is a story that would go on to shape the world as we know it. This is a story that would lead to the idea that all humans have dignity, that every person matters, that there are no accidents or mistakes or untouchable classes of people. This is the story that would form and shape people like Martin Luther King Jr. and lead him to believe and lead him to live with the conviction that the arc of the moral universe is long, but that it bends toward justice. This is ultimately a story of hope. Walter Brueggemann writes, "Hope is the conviction that God is tenacious and persistent in overcoming the deathliness of the world, that God intends joy and peace." Christians find compelling evidence in the story of Jesus that Jesus, with great persistence and great vulnerability, everywhere he went, turned the enmity of society toward a new possibility, turned the sadness of the world toward joy, introduced a new regime where the dead are raised, the lost are found, and the displaced are brought home again. If you choose to believe this story of Jesus, this is what it offers: hope. Hope that by believing the story of Jesus, we are joining the process of writing a better story than the one that we see in front of us right now. A story of hope. That's the key to great joy. Like when the Apostle Peter writes that you may have had to suffer for a while, he knows that with a story of hope, he can write this with confidence. Like that though you have not seen him, though you have not seen Jesus, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy. So he says, even though you haven't seen Jesus, even though you don't see him now, you believe the story. That takes faith, right? That's what we talk about. It takes some faith. But to believe really any story, if you think about it, requires faith. Like I think it takes a lot of faith to believe that there is no good, no evil, no justice in this world, that there's no meaning, that nothing matters. And what a gamble that ends up being if that story ends up being wrong. So as for me, I haven't seen Jesus with my eyes. I don't see him with my eyes right now, but I choose to believe his story. It is a story that has hope. And if you believe that story, you end up joining God in writing it with your life. That story says, hey, your suffering is difficult, but it's leading to something. Your sadness is normal, but it's temporary. The arc of the story is long, and it doesn't move at the speed you want, but it bends toward justice. And we get to be a part of writing it and moving the world toward it. That's what we get to do. That's what the hope is. So, did you know that you could have great joy, even if it's dark right now, even if it's difficult right now, even if the world is scary right now? Joy that transcends even the darkest of times, that comes because of great hope. So I hope that you choose to believe the story of hope, and that you continue to choose to believe the story of hope. And if you do, and as you do, you will get to write that story with your life and bring more hope and more joy into a world that desperately needs it. Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for sending your son Jesus, God, for the story of hope that his life and his death and his resurrection represent. God, I pray that for all of us, as we sit here in the waiting that leads up to Christmas, as we deal with the struggles and the suffering in our lives and the struggles and the suffering around us, God, that you would help us to believe the story of hope, that we could write that story with you, and we could discover the great joy that comes with it. Pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thanks for such a great message, Paul. The story we choose to believe is the story we will write. There's a lot that happens to us, a lot that happens around us that maybe we can't change, but we can have great joy even in what may feel like the darkest of times. Like Paul challenged us a couple weeks ago, God, I know you're in this. Help me to join in. Well, thanks for being with us for Epic Everywhere. Right now, you can go ahead and pull out your phones because it's time to text in. This is such an important step that we all can take towards connection, whether it's your first time or your 40th time. And to text in today, all you have to do is text the word HERE to 215-999-8575. When you text us, we're going to text you right back, and that'll give you the link to the hub, which has everything you need for today. Up on the hub today, you'll see a spot to submit a prayer request, also where you can go ahead and give today. You know, our giving is what moves our mission forward, so thank you to everybody who has been and will be generous throughout this holiday season. My family is giving generously as well because we're committed to doing our part to contribute to our vision, which is to see every person in the city follow Jesus. And for anybody who is new, hey, when you text in for the first time, we have a free tea that we want to mail to you, so make sure you do that. We also have a party going down that is just for you called our Welcome Party, and it's held on Zoom and such a great starting point for any of you who are new to Epic. Well, before you head out today, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, comment on our question of the day below this video, and make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Also, make sure to share this and encourage somebody else. And as we close out today's episode, I'm going to go ahead and drop a link to some Christmas music from our band Epic MSC. And every week we drop a brand new episode of Epic Everywhere, so invite a friend to join you, and I'll see you right back here on YouTube next week.